Hello, everybody, and welcome to finally to week one edition of the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. We did it, guys. We finally had some college football last weekend. Not a lot of games, but some very interesting games, some very interesting twists and turns, and I'm sure we're going to talk a bit more about those later. But yeah, this is the big one this week. We got a ton of games, a lot of really interesting ones, a lot of lines that have actually moved based off of the games we saw this last weekend. So yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about this week. I am joined as always by my co-host Buck Metrics. How are you doing today?
I am excited, and I am better than a certain coach that calls Lincoln, Nebraska his home.
I'm fairly sure most people are doing
Yes.
better than Scott Frost right now. We will definitely talk about Scott Frost a little bit later. There's a lot of thoughts we have about that game. But first, I think we're going to talk a little bit. We're going to do something we call the executive dashboard. Do you want to explain to listeners and a couple viewers, but more listeners? I think more people listen to this podcast. What is the executive dashboard?
So I think I mentioned in the first preseason pod this summer that I'm an executive financial consultant. And usually what happens is a client brings me in and they say, oh my gosh, I've broken this company and I don't know what's going on. And so I help them. I say, let's get a dashboard together for you so you know where do we stand, what are the key things that you need to be apprised of, and what are the narratives that you need to, keep an eye on. So I thought since I'm kind of in that mindset, it's just a good way to do a little recap of what's happened, what are we looking at, in the immediate past and going forward. Um, so here's the first one. I'm just going to run through the dashboard. There's, a few little panels. I've got thoughts on each of these, on some of them, and as you have thoughts, just chime in. Otherwise, we will, go in deeper dives on some of this after I go through. So the first panel, market intelligence. This is getting at what can I divine from the lines that I'm seeing now, and are they giving us any kind of narrative or story that we should be aware of? First thing that sticks out to me is Nevada. They went from giving 8.5 to giving 1, hosting Texas State. I think I actually saw Pick'em at my guy this morning. Um, we'll get later to New Mexico State, but if you saw Nevada, boy, they were not impressive. Not very good on offense, not very good on defense. And amazingly, what I really enjoyed was that giant quarterback was out there running quarterback keepers. It basically looked like Chet Holmgren out there, just running around 7 feet tall and not really making people miss, but looking very memorable, we'll say. That was fun. Illinois, even though they won pretty handily over Wyoming, they're still getting 3 at Indiana. What does this tell me? Well, if you saw that, Tommy DeVito just continued his awesome ways. He had a QB plus of 59, and remember, 100 is average. 59 is basically that would have put you second last in all of FBS last season. You know, ahead of only the Arizona quarterback. So he had a QB plus of 59 in a blowout win over Wyoming. I'm not sure how you QB can be that bad in a blowout win. So clearly the market is not really a believer in Illinois at this point.
The market is not fighting Illini today. Uh, Quick point on that too, and it's really crazy because like if you watch that game, and I did watch that game. We talked about we're like, come on, Wyoming plus 11 is fine. That did not cash, but it didn't cash like the way like it seemed like a blowout, but at the same time, like Illinois was thoroughly unimpressive for like the entire first half of that game. I watched a lot of that game, and a lot of the times it was quite close. It's just that Illinois just got blown out near the end, and I think that a lot of people are now saying that Wyoming is just not it's not too deep at every position. Like you don't have two FBS athletes at every position. And you know what? Maybe that's fine. But guess what? That doesn't mean Illinois is amazing now.
I
Right?
yeah
Like
one other thing on that. I forgot about this, but somebody made the point that actually over the summer, uh, Illinois actually had like a casting call for backup quarterbacks. They were like that low at quarterbacks. So um, forgot about that. Remembered it now. I didn't bet Wyoming. I think I said that was a play, but I consider myself warned, especially since I got blown up by a team that's getting 3, at Bloomington.
that's a match I'm gonna look now at. I think it's a bit iffy. I'd love to fade Illinois. I don't know if I'm gonna do it this week or not. I have to look a little bit more at Indiana and some stuff. I still my model is still not functioning yet, but like Indiana -3 is looking that looks pretty attractive. I'd have to say. I don't hate that look right now at this point.
Yeah, I just one piece of advice before we move on. If you're going to look closer at Indiana, take some no-dos. We'll just say that. Okay. Still within the market intelligence panel, Western Kentucky is giving 16 and a half to Hawaii. The total is 67.5, which is interesting, considering that they gave up 27 points to Austin P. What sticks out to me is, they have a new DC, and I think clearly they had some problems. You shouldn't be giving that many points to Austin P. And this implies, that if I do the math here real quick, Hawaii is projected to score 25. And based on what I saw on Saturday, they didn't look like they're going to score 25 for the whole month of September. So interesting. Clearly, the market is not a believer in the Western Kentucky defense.
This is an interesting line for me. I saw this at first, I think on late Saturday night, and basically every single time I've looked at this line since, it's moved a point to Western Kentucky. It was 14 and a half. Then like on Monday it was like 15 and a half. Today it's 16 and a half. No idea where it's going to end up on Saturday. But it's the thing of it is though, like Hawaii didn't look bad. I feel like that loss was not as bad as it seemed. Like, yeah, okay, when you see Vanderbilt putting up, what was it, 58 or 60 some odd points, I can't remember, it looks really bad. But at the same time, there was stuff like, oh, random pick, scoop and score. Like, there was a lot of just piling it on. Like, this was not, like, their quarterback
Mm,
was still not very good. Hawaii's defense, not particularly good. Their offense was doing stuff, but I feel like they were just in desperation mode the entire, like, second half. And I feel like, just watching and, like, they were just basically so many drops, like passes right on someone, just a complete drop. I don't think it was fair. The other thing is the fact that I looked at that Western Kentucky game. They had four. Austin P turned the ball over four times. They had four recovered fumbles. If you need four recovered fumbles to beat Austin P
yeah,
by what, 12?
I think so. Yeah,
Uh, like,
yeah.
they're in Hawaii.
Try repeating that on the road, right? I
Yeah,
guess is the first thing.
they're on the road in Hawaii. I I don't know. Like, let's see where this. I'm interested to see. Like, will this be 21 on Sunday Saturday morning? It could be. This could be something kind of interesting. Like, I don't think. This could be a line I'm looking at. I'm gonna take a look at this line, and we'll get there when we get there. I don't think Hawaii is that bad, but I think it's more a play against Western Kentucky. Like, Bailey Zapp is gone, right? Bailey Zapp is somehow a New England Patriot. Um, like, I don't, and that's not a knock on Bailey Zapp, by the way. I like Bailey Zapp. It's just weird that he's a New England Patriot. You think he'd be some other team, but no, I'm not loving this Western Kentucky team. So that's a line I'm looking at as we get. Let's see if this gets to like 20 or so. I'm gonna look at this line a lot.
Mm. Well, God bless you for that. Not on TV here in the States, and I think it's probably better that way. Um, Virginia Tech giving 7.5 at Old Dominion. I made my case earlier before the season started about Old Dominion, how I like them. This is interesting. It's almost gotten past the line that stinks out loud. It's just like, what's going on here? What I really like about this too, aside from the whole case I made about Old Dominion, is a very interesting matchup here in that you've got the head coach of Old Dominion, Ricky Ronnie, is from Penn State, as is the new defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech, Brett Pry. And I've seen this happen before sometimes where you've got the new coach at the new program and the opposing team or coach knows better than new coach's team what he's trying to do. I think that's pretty. There's that some of that's got to be baked into the line. I thought that this game was going to be closer to 14 when I was looking at the schedule, before the season, and I think that's some compression in that line.
Yeah, the fact that it isn't higher is a major red flag to me. I actually jumped on this line already. I got it 8.5 yesterday. Now it's down to 7. I got it, and I'm like, should I bet this? And I'm like, well, it's probably fine. Like, no one's probably gonna bet it, but you know what? I may as well just place the bet now, and then I've gotten already point of closing line value. But yeah, this is the same kind of feeling as that Nevada New Mexico State line. And yes, we didn't get the win there, but like we probably should have, right?
Yeah,
Like, I
we'll
mean,
we'll get
we
to
all
that.
saw that pick that was never reviewed for some reason. Like,
Hmm.
that probably should have been a New Mexico State cover, possibly even a win if a couple of weird things didn't happen, right? So, yeah, no, that's another trap line, and I'm happy that like that was we were clearly right in saying that was a trap line, although it didn't pay off. We'll get that eventually, and this is a very clear opportunity for us to get that one back. But yeah, I actually
Yeah.
kind of do like Old Dominion.
Yeah, yeah, likewise. Fun game to watch. I think that's on Friday too. So this
Yeah,
is
it is. Yeah,
interesting. Georgia State getting only 13 at South Carolina. Kind of short for a Sun Belt team on the road. And I bring that up because you've got North Carolina is, I think, favored only by one at App State now. And then the week after, they're at Georgia State. Just interesting data point for game to keep an eye on a week from Saturday when Carolina is that Georgia, a Georgia State team that clearly the market has some belief in. What else we got here still in the market intelligence? Arizona, we mentioned this a little bit in one of the preseason pods, getting only 6 at San Diego State. San Diego State opening up brand new stadium. San Diego State now, since that podcast, having some turmoil with the shakeout from the rape allegations against Matt Ariza and how they handled that. Arizona getting only 6, and I think their season win total was 2.5 or 3. I know San Diego State's was 8 or 8.5, depending on where you shop. And I
yeah,
think this is kind of instructive on where both teams are headed and might end up.
yeah. That's the thing. Um, this is a line I might look at. I'm like, the thing of it is, the Bills I think handled it as best they could. They didn't know if it was going to come out, and then when it came out, they got rid of Matt Ariza. They cut him, Ariza. Did they know probably beforehand? Yeah, probably. Does it matter? No. I mean, you've got Deshaun Watson running around there, right? Like, I don't think they did what they did, and I'm okay with the way the Bills handle the situation. It's good that he's not on the team. That's fine. That being said, though, San Diego State definitely would have known about this a lot earlier because they were actually investigating the situation. So they have no excuse for why they didn't deal with this a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I'm not, we've had concerns about this program, and again, the thing of it is, if Ariza and some of the other ones were carrying the team in that case, then maybe that's why they were like, yeah, we're not going to really look into this too much. So yeah, I don't hate the idea of Arizona here. Again, this is dare I say it, a must win for Arizona to go over their season win total.
I don't know if I see +6. I think that this kind of speaks that they're going to have more chances than we think to do well in the Pac-12. Not a bowl, but probably better than a lot of people are expecting. Next game that's interesting to me, BYU only giving 12 at South Florida. Why do I bring this up? Remember my whole South Florida scenario where I said just let them like stealthily just kind of do whatever and get ready to keep an eye on that game versus East Carolina in week 5. This is interesting. I had anticipated this line would be closer to maybe 19 or 20. I don't know what your thoughts are. Does that kind of seem reasonable to you?
I've actually run. This is actually fascinating because I actually have this on my model. So as you know, my model isn't updated for this year because there's just too much variability with a lot of quarterbacks and how these teams are constructed. So I basic in my from my model, if these two teams met in a bowl, I would have BYU. This line is perfect, exactly where I said it. I said it BYU minus 12. Now that is probably wrong because at the same time, BYU has now had an entire year to get better, right? A lot of these
Mhm.
guys are still young. Like their quarterback, I think that was his first year as a starting quarterback. Now it's his
Yes.
second year. The team's gotten a lot better. They've been like they actually lost a couple people into the NFL back in 2021. Now they've restocked these guys. So like yeah, like although my model says 12, it's definitely like that's probably the kind of floor here. So I don't hate BYU. Also, South Florida usually doesn't start the season too well, so
Yeah.
I don't hate that.
Kind of my plan there too. Like I said, just let them. I thought they would just get crushed in this game, and then in week 5 have some value on there. So hoping that that happens. Good luck to Jeff Scott. Last one in the market intelligence panel. This is interesting. Rutgers getting only 7 at Boston College. Boston College gets Phil Jerkovic back, and Rutgers has been, I think, better, clearly better than when Shiano took over. Although still kind of the runt of the East. This line seems short to me. Not enough for me to bet, but I'm not sure if this is telling me that Rutgers is going to pose, a challenge to some of the other lower teams in the Big Ten, or if Boston College is in for a rough season.
Yeah, that's interesting. If I were to like, I'm not going to bet this for the simple reason if I bet Rutgers in this game and then Rutgers loses by 20, I'm going to feel really bad. So I'm just not going to do that. We're just going to skip that part of this. But no, it's a game I'm going to definitely see the result of because again, like when you see some of these teams, like yeah, okay, I don't want to bet this game, but I definitely want to know if Rutgers is able to put up a fight and or if Boston College puts up a fight, right? Like this is kind of the thing with the Nebraska Northwestern game. We're going to talk obviously a lot more about what happened specifically, but there's kind of two takeaways you could take away from that game, right? Nebraska won. Oh, sorry, Northwestern won. Sorry, Northwestern won. Right, they beat Nebraska. So at this point, either both of them are bad, and Northwestern is a slightly better team than the worst Nebraska team, or both of these teams are kind of good. Right. So now, based off of next results, so like next week, I'm not
Mm,
sure. I'm not even sure who Northwestern plays. Nebraska plays a bunch of D2 or kind of Power Five schools, or yeah, group of five schools. But like if Northwestern goes out and like does something, I don't know who they play next, but if they actually do something against like Wisconsin or like Michigan State or something, then you're like, oh, okay,
yeah.
maybe Northwestern isn't that bad, and then you kind of drag Nebraska along in tow, right? So
Yeah. They kind
yeah,
of validate the effort.
exactly. And now that's just one example of it. It's probably a much better example using like say Rutgers and Boston College here, but that's the thing, right? If this game is competitive, it means they're both equal, and if one of them upsets someone, then the other team's not that far behind.
Yeah. Agree. All right. So the next panel, we referred this, I think is in the last podcast, the brand based market inertia, BBMI as I call it. So this is where I'm seeing a not movement in the market, and it's probably because the market's got a little attachment to the branding of some of these teams. New Mexico State, the line really has not moved significantly. They're still getting 36 and a half or around that at Minnesota. What's interesting to me is you hit on this a little bit, and just to go into a little more detail, if you saw that game, it was really a game of two quarterbacks on the Mexico State sideline. One game is a really small sample size for QB plus, but it's instructive, if not precise. So the starter for New Mexico State, Diego Pavia, who apparently won the junior college national championship last season and might be better served in junior college than where he is now. He had a QB plus of negative 98, which is just kind of light as bending on how bad you are at that point. His replacement, Gavin Frakes, interestingly, I don't know how Jerry Kill does this, but he talked this kid out of going to Princeton in favor of New Mexico State. That's not something you see every day, and that's a hell of a job recruiting. And Frakes had a QB plus of 149. And if you just saw it, it was very, very different. They actually could pass the ball. When Pavia was in there, it was just your typical kind of what I was expecting. Apologies, since you're a Florida guy, Florida fan at least. What I'm kind of thinking it sounds like Billy Napier is going to do with Anthony Richardson was just run, 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 and maybe throw and hope. Um, so just a very different team. Their defense looked good. They don't have the biggest, best guys, but they don't make mistakes. When the other team gashed him, it was just because they were bigger and stronger. No respect, and maybe it's just because we've talked about this before. At some point, the point spread doesn't really mean anything. You're just kind of betting on how much Team A is going to run it up, and that might be the case here. But I think there could be some inertia attached to Mexico State, so I am definitely keeping an eye on them.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota loves running the ball. Are they really gonna like if New like the question is at what point like does New Mexico State score enough points? Is 14 points enough to cover this? Right, like that's the thing. 14 points would mean that New Mexico would have to maybe you have to be 50 to 14, right? Is Minnesota really gonna run the ball down the field for 50 points? Really? Like, do they care? Right? Like the thing of it is, if you're up that much and you're running, you're just gonna be like, cool, we're gonna run the ball like two times for a new down, and each time we're gonna burn like 30 seconds off the clock. So right, like good luck, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't like it is hard to see them like I don't think Minnesota's gonna kind of do want or even kind of want to cover this massive spread. I think they're just gonna be like, yeah. But the thing is, at the same time, it's still iffy. I'm not in love with this spread though. But it definitely could be that could be the kind of game we're seeing.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet this one. Like I said, I'm just going to. It makes me even more tuned to Mexico State. At that point, lines this big. You're betting on how long are the starters going to come in. How much is the new OC going to want to stretch his legs versus keep the playbook closed. Not my kind of stuff to bet on. The next BBMI, Florida Atlantic, only giving Florida Ohio. Florida Atlantic, they had an underrated offense last season, and I know that I said Charlotte's defense is terrible, and they are, but their offense looked really, really good. Nkosi Perry really looked like a guy who's thriving in Conference USA in a conference win. They just blew out Charlotte, and they have an offense. Todd Orlando, former USC defensive coordinator, landed at FAU after they dispatched Mike Stoops, who had last been seen ruining Oklahoma's chances at the 2017 national title. I think that there's a lot there. Florida Atlantic actually had a really, really good defense in 2020. They had Jim Levitt as a DC. He got hired away by SMU. I really am going to keep my eye on Florida Atlantic. I actually played this one yesterday, and I'm very confident in it. Ohio was really, really bad. Like coaches, I don't know how long he's for the program. He's a new coach that came on the end of last summer. Um, this looks like an easy line to me. I like this one. Well, oh,
Uh,
your last. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I actually kind of agree. I watched a bit of that game. That team, like that Florida Atlantic team, is actually not that bad. It's again, it's Miami of Ohio. So not a particularly yeah, like I don't hate that line at all. I think they could definitely like it was a pretty solidly good game out of them, and
Yeah,
yeah, like it was a good game on all fronts. Like it wasn't just like they were good on offense, they were good on defense. Yeah, just a full round good package, and that's what you're looking for when you're betting a team like this. So yeah, give me the Owls. Yeah, the Owls.
the
Let's give me
Owls.
the Owls. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Last instance of BBMI. NC State only giving 12 at East Carolina. I think that um, there's a little bit of attachment to East Carolina in terms of their nice little story that they made a bowl last year. I think this should be closer to 20 than 12. Curious if you're of the same mindset on that.
Yeah, I I don't particularly love this game at all. I like I don't want to touch this, but yeah, I think this should probably be a bigger line. Like like this East Carolina team will randomly do this. They'll be like, "Oh, like I remember a game with them and it was East Carolina versus something. I can't remember who it was. It was the early game. It was in, like the week 1 game last year, and it was like it was a spread exactly like this. I think it was like 11, 11 and a half, and they got crushed, and it wasn't even close at all. And I like if I was thinking of betting this, I just have flashbacks to that game. I can't remember who they played, but it was something like it was a team from like the South. I can't remember if it was like NC. I don't think it was NC. Actually, no. Wow, we have the magic of the internet in front of us. Let's look this up. But no, I kind of agree. This should be a bigger spread. I would think this is a bigger spread. I don't think this is 11. I think this is like this should definitely be a lot bigger. So I actually completely agree with that statement. Yeah. Where you put this at 20?
I would have it around 20. Yeah, maybe 19, just short of 20, just kind of short of a key number there. I'm not going to bet it, but and it's not small enough to be this line stinks. This just makes me think that there's just, you know, people are seeing Cinderella story 2.0 for East Carolina. And they
Appalachian State, that's who it was. Yeah, so
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And that's the thing, right? They lost 33-19. The spread was like 11. So this is the thing, right? They have a like the time anytime East Carolina plays someone good, like they lost against South Carolina, well actually not a lot by last year, but they lost to Houston in OT, but like yeah, they just have a nasty habit of not keeping it close against teams that they should be competitive with. So
Yeah. All right, so that's the BBMI. The next panel is my top QBs, and again, this is their week 0, so it's very small sample size, but interesting here. Top quarterback Doug Brumfeld of UNLV. Number 2, Jordan Travis of Florida State, and third is Nkosi Perry of Florida Atlantic. FAU we talked about. Florida State played Duquesne. I'm not interested in that. Doug Brumfeld, number 1. Interesting. First of all, he got the start over Harrison Bailey, who really stunk somehow. They played a really, really, really bad and overmatched Idaho State defense, but this was by far the best game of the Marcus Arroyo era. I have seen way too much of it, but it was great to see. They actually had um, concepts on offense that were working and were being executed, which we hadn't seen before. It was just a pleasure, and it was a little bit of validation on my end.
mhm. Yeah. So first things first, I had no idea that was how you pronounce Florida State's opponents. I thought it was Duchesne or like Du Duquest or something. So yeah, so how do you say that school again?
Duquesne,
Duquesne. Okay, good
yes.
to
Do you
know.
know? Yeah. Did you see Shawshank Redemption?
No,
Okay,
that's
because yeah,
probably why then.
because everybody is 20 years younger than me, and nobody's seen the movies that I've seen. Okay.
No. Here's the thing though. It's actually not a bad idea. So like for Jordan Travis though, that's one I'm keeping my eye on because a lot of people are saying LSU over Florida. Like over Florida State. That's the Sunday night game because we don't have football this week. We don't have NFL football. We have college football. So there's no NFL on Sunday. So we get this 7:30 ABC Florida State LSU game. And the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm kind of thinking that I don't hate Florida State +3 because this team was actually not bad last year, but LSU was actually really bad. And to the point where it raised questions as to how much talent this LSU team actually had. And while Brian Kelly is a very good coach, I question whether or not he could pull that around in 6 months or so. So like you can't just well actually you can with the transfer portal, but like it's still hard to like just
Yeah.
magic people into existence that are like good at playing football. So I I'm looking at Florida State, and that's kind of interesting that he was one of the best QBs. Now I'm looking at this; he actually only had 15 passing attempts, went 11 for 15 against a Division II school that I didn't even know how to pronounce the name of. So not great, but not bad either. But yeah, no, FAU again, same kind of thing, Florida Atlantic. So that's not bad at all.
Yeah. My top receivers. This is based on that yards above replacement, where we say anybody can run a 5 yard pattern, catch the ball, and fall down. Excuse me. So who had the most yards um, above that 5 yards per reception? Number one, Ricky White at UNLV. Very encouraging again for UNLV, although it was against Idaho State. Stay tuned on that. Number two and number four, I'm going to put together Tyron Smith at UTEP and Ronaldo Flores of UTEP. When I made my case for UTEP, I remember, you might remember, I said, I think that they will find another person who will be explosive. Dana Dimel's kind of in that mode where he's been around Kansas State and he knows how to kind of find the next one and get him in there. And Tyron Smith actually had a better yards per reception than Cowing did last year. Cowing, who's now at Arizona. So that was encouraging. And then number three, just to fill the gap there, gentleman named Daywood Davis of Western Kentucky. Have not heard of him. Interesting that Western Kentucky has somebody on this list. Now, they did play, I'm forgetting already, Austin P, but that's interesting considering they had a complete overhaul at offense, new OC, new quarterback. Maybe some remnants there at Western Kentucky that, on the offense at least, clearly we went over their defensive problems. Maybe didn't see the game. Maybe this is the only guy that could catch a pass, but interesting.
Yeah, that's the thing. Apparently, we're a UNLV podcast now. We're like rating everybody
Yes,
from UNLV quite highly. But yeah, no, it's yeah, the UTEP guys weren't bad. It was a much worse that loss looked a lot worse on paper than it actually was as well. That's another example of one. Again, they just kind of got desperate in the second half, going for it on fourth downs, losing on fourth downs, all that stuff. Um, but yeah, no, it's UTEP's gonna be an interesting team to watch. Western Kentucky, I don't know. They're just, I don't know. Western Kentucky and Hawaii are just gonna score like a billion points. So I don't know. Let's see what happens when the dust settles there. I don't know what's gonna happen on whenever this game finally ends. Well actually my sports book actually has it happening on Friday, because it doesn't understand that games happen at midnight, so it thinks that it's
yeah,
like midnight. Or no, actually, my game has it happening on Monday. Sorry, my game because it thinks for midnight it's actually on like midnight on Monday rather than on Sunday. But it's like
on the
we're gonna be up till
following
like
day. Yeah,
or on Sunday, so we're gonna be up till like I don't know 3 a.m. Well, on the East Coast, you're just gonna be like, oh, it's 10 o'clock. I should go to bed now. But we're gonna on the East Coast, we're gonna be till like 3 a.m. watching Western Kentucky and Hawaii just keep scoring points against each other. So yeah, that's uh that's gonna be like again everything's done by then, right? Like the only other game is gonna be Boise State Oregon, but like they're gonna be an hour and a half into their game before this game even
yeah,
kicks off. So yeah, gonna be a that's gonna be an interesting game there.
yep. I definitely agree. Next panel, my future bets. The one I'm feeling the best about, UNLV over 4. The one I'm feeling worst about, UTEP to win Conference USA. I'm very encouraged by the UTEP offensive showing. They really just shot themselves in the foot a lot. You can't lose your first conference game against a team like North Texas, though. Um, and they complete less than 50% of their passes too. So I think clearly they have some explosiveness at wide receiver. They've got the guy that can throw it. I think they're just kind of adjusting to life without Jacob Cowing, and hopefully they can just kind of get past that.
Yeah,
And we are a UNLV pod, like you said, so that's like 4 panels we've talked about them.
yeah, you're a fifth of the way there to the UNLV over already.
Yes. Then the last panel. I've got 3 names here for the coaches on the hottest hot seats. And number one, Scott Frost. let's just put a pin in that. That is its own discussion. And to be honest with you, part of the appeal of the dashboard here was to keep us from spending 60 minutes on Scott Frost and how awesome he is. Number two, Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech. I actually would have had Collins at one because it was just a foregone conclusion that he's not going to do it this year and he's just going to be gone. But Scott Frost just grabbed that conch and said, "No, I'm running this island now." And then third, of course, Brian Harson. You know, like you, I think you characterized it as a soft launch at a coup. So we'll get the real thing probably in a few months, especially since, interesting enough, their AD resigned just before the start of the football season and got great tweets of appreciation from the athletic director at Tennessee who said, "Yeah, the Auburn job sucks. It's dysfunction. Congratulations on hanging in there that long." So, um,
Yeah.
great. Get candidates for turnover. I think that we're going to see all three of these guys gone definitely by the first of the year.
It's amazing that two of these guys haven't played a game yet and they're already on the hot seat. I mean, it's fair. Like we know it, but it's like Scott Frost played a game, did horribly. Yeah, he's on the hot seat. Yeah, these guys we know they're gonna get fired, but we're just gonna put them on the hot seat before they even play a game. Yeah, completely right on that. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see next week. We'll have to see who gets on the hot seat. I'm actually like in the past, like I've actually been pretty good at feeling out when a coach will like. Cause like last year I called Mullen getting fired, so obviously I'll start at maybe next week. I'll once we see some of the week one results, I'll start adding a couple names to this, and we'll see if I can call some people in the hot seat. But yeah, these three are definitely gone. Like Scott Frost, again, it's I'm not sure when it was announced. It was announced probably months ago, but his buyout is halved on October 2nd, which is random, but whatever. His buyout then falls by half to on only $7.5 million, an affordable $7.5 million. So then at that point, then they can get rid of him, and I suspect that's exactly what will happen very soon after that. They play Oklahoma, I think, the next week, and if that game is a bloodbath, then yeah, that like if they lose by 40, that's the okay, you're gone. I think that's that game. If I had to hazard a guess. Um, all right, so now I think we've now finally reached Nebraska, so we can talk about what happened in that game. Um, what are your thoughts on what happened there? Did you actually for Ozzy? Did you watch that game?
Oh, of course. I mean, that was must see TV.
It really
Um,
was.
you know, there's so much that's been said so far, so I'm not going to just relive everything. The one thing that sticks out to me is there's been so many quantifications and just great explanations of just how bad that was and just how bad he is. In particular, that game. I kind of feel like as a numbers guy, I can't do it justice. There's a movie that came out in the '90s called Contact, and it's about. Did you see it? Matthew McConaughey and Jodie Foster. So
I didn't see it. No.
it's about the United States are trying to send somebody to another galaxy, and one of the big plot lines is who's going to be the astronaut that actually gets to do it, and it ends up Jodie Foster ends up getting to make the intergalactic trip. So halfway through her journey, she goes through this wormhole, and it's all crazy. And there's a moment of silence, and she comes across the distant galaxy the first time, and she just starts weeping, and because she's a scientist and an astronaut, she just says, "There are no words. They should have sent a poet." And I think that we're at that point where Scott Frost is getting so artful with his losses that we need a poet. We don't need a football person to describe how awesome his losses are. We just don't have the lexicon just to describe just how great these losses are.
Yeah, I agree. So, this is truly insane. Like we've just reached an absolute absurd stage in this. Like, and again, obviously a lot. So on one hand, before we get into this, I do kind of want to say that maybe we are being a little unfair to Scott Frost here because normally when Nebraska messes up horribly and loses a game in spectacular fashion, usually there's other games happening that are far more intriguing.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets papered over. We're like, oh yeah, like oh Georgia looked amazing against another SEC team, and also Nebraska lost somehow even though they're up 18. So like it just kind of gets papered over. But there was nothing there, like unless you were watching Western Kentucky versus Austin P, which I guess if you live in Kentucky or wherever Austin P is, I guess maybe you're watching that game. But if you were anywhere else, you were watching this game, and it was this is fully on display for the entire country, and I'm in Canada, so obviously Canada to see. And this is the thing, it like the quarterback was good. Casey Thompson was great. the thing that everybody's going to raise is the onside kick, which was completely pointless and insane. He basically said after the game, so they went up 11 in the third, so there's 24 minutes left in the game, and then they elected to do an onside kick, which was surprising to everybody, and apparently even surprising to people on Nebraska special teams because they didn't act like it was an onside kick until the guy had the ball. And the thing of it is, he said after the game, he's like, "Oh, I thought if we could recover that onside kick, then we could score and we could put the game out of reach." And like that's a fair point because like we all remember in the national championship game when Georgia went up 2 scores, and then they were like, "All right, they went for the onside kick and then got it and scored against Alabama to put the game." Like that never happened. That's insane. Like that's acting like if you're like a massive underdog and you need a special play that no one's expecting to. You were 11-point favorites. Like you can't be you. I mean, obviously you can be more favored in games, but like it's hard to be more favored than that in a game. You are better at every single position. Your quarterback is way better. The A dot on the other guy was like 5 yards. For Northwestern's quarterback, it's like 5 yards. Like it's absolutely insane that they thought they needed this. If you're the better team, you don't need to do stuff like this. You can, if they score, good. You go down this field and score again. That's because you're the better team. And the
Oh,
thing of it is,
they
oh
weren't covering, so they needed to score.
no, they
I'm joking.
I mean, actually, when I first saw that, I'm like, does he have Northwestern plus 11.5? That's like literally, I was like, is that what he has? Like, does he bet Northwestern? He's like, we're winning by too much. We need to give them a couple points. Like, we gotta make sure Northwestern
Yeah.
covers the spread here. But like, no, like we've always described this Nebraska team, and we've always said like, ah, well, they're good, but like they just keep losing these close games, and we're like, oh, they lose these close games, and we talk about, and again in this podcast and other people too, the analytics guys, they always talk about like regression to the mean and mean like luck regression and all this stuff, and usually those are fundamental principles in football that work, right? If a team gets a lot of turnover luck in one season, it'll regress the next season. If they lose a lot of close games one season, then they'll regress and it'll become either equal, or maybe they'll win more one score games the next season. But this keeps happening. It just keeps happening
Yes.
with this team. And the thing of it is, I'm starting to like change my opinion on it. I always thought that this was like a good team that was like being unlucky. I'm starting to think that these are really good athletes that are just being let down by a bad coach. And I think
It's
that's where we're at now. Like we have to say this Nebraska team is talented. Casey Thompson was great. Somehow he only threw for one passing touchdown. I don't know how that even happened. He was looked amazing. Somebody only had one passing touchdown, but he still looked amazing even just with that. But they're just being let down by the team. They're being let down by the coaching. And eventually that will change. And I think Nebraska is going to be okay, but they just need to get rid of Scott Frost. And that's where we're at with this Nebraska team.
absolutely. And you know, getting back to your point, I'll circle back to that in a second. But the thing this loss had, it seemed like it had all the elements of just a great Scott Frost loss. It was in spectacular fashion. It wasn't like a Jeff Collins thing where it's like we're gonna lose by 20 and it'll be boring football because nobody wants to see just one person get murdered with his hands tied behind his back. Spectacular. It just classic Scott Frost. There was hope. There was belief. Then there was a horrible decision. I joked that he just maybe Frost just made a horrible decision because he wanted Narduzzi to feel like he was back at home with Whipple and just had just this crazy coaching decision that threw everybody off their feet. You have this special teams disaster, which is just so unique to them, and it's just their thing in week 0. And then you've got the body language from the sideline just puts the entire team in pucker mode. This is what's amazing. Through the first 3 quarters, Casey Thompson's QB plus was plus 176. Elite. In the fourth quarter, as you see, Frost is just totally puckering and his face is just turning into just, like he's watched somebody be murdered. Thompson's QB plus was negative 93. Just, to your point, are they being let down by the coaches? Yeah, I think it's more proactive than that, where you've got the coaches basically just giving off a vibe from the very top of like, here we go again.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, again, we were watching this from an entire continent away, right? How do you feel if you're Casey Thompson, right? How do you feel if you're sitting
Yeah.
there and you're like, what the heck is he doing? We just went down the field, we just scored again. We're up 11. What are like punt, kick it deep, make
Yeah.
them go 80 yards. where I'm better than their guy. I'm a better quarterback than their guy. I could throw the like he had that amazing play where he was like like he was done. He was basically caught by the defense, scrambled around, threw it like 50 yards down the field. Just an amazing play. Casey Thompson looked amazing. He looked
Yeah.
and again, the thing is, like, he came from Texas. They get good people, and the fact that he even went to Nebraska shows you that this school still has potential in the future. Like, once they get rid of Scott Frost, if they get to actually have decent coach in there, this team might actually be good because they're still recruiting at an elite level somehow through a miracle, I guess. But this is the thing, like they're at this point where like it's they're being let down by bad coaching and bad leadership. And maybe if you get Whipple, if Scott Frost is gone and Whipple gets a battlefield promotion, maybe this team can actually do something this year. Um, Now the question is though, so the next three games, obviously, so actually they play this week and they play North Dakota, not North
Hmm.
Dakota State, North Dakota. There's a difference, obviously a difference. And then they play Georgia Southern next week, and then they play Oklahoma. Then they play Oklahoma on. Then they play Oklahoma September 17th. Do we dare bet against them with either North Dakota or Georgia Southern? Like, is it like?
I,
Are we at a point where that might be worth? Like, what's the spread going to be? Right, like what's the spread going to be with that when they're playing North Dakota? Like what could that spread
yeah.
probably be? Right, like it's got
Well,
to be what
well, I,
40
yeah.
something like that. Like is that
Mm,
worth it?
well, after last week, I don't know. I think the analog is last year. You know, they actually covered against Fordham at home by 42. Um, one of these is going to be like that.
But
Um,
I agree with that. But at the same point in time, are we not looking at like full rebellion? Like are they not being like screw this, we're done? Like
I don't know if it's rebellion as just as much as like, can we get just play 60 minutes of football without somebody just crapping the bed on the sidelines? I don't know if it's like I hate my coach. It's just more like I hate my coach melting down. Um, so I think there's just too much of disparity with North Dakota. Georgia Southern, that's not going to happen. Georgia Southern is in a bad spot. Um, Scott Frost versus Clay Hilton is just an elite level of horrible coaching, we got to say. So it can't be in those two games. Um, Oklahoma. I mean, I don't know. Who knows what to make of Oklahoma?
we won't know until that game, right?
Yeah,
Because it's gonna like I don't even know what the spread of that game is going to be. What is the spread of that? Because the thing of it is, like, sure, like Nebraska lost to Northwestern, but like they did it in close fashion. Like that
yeah,
spread could be 7.5, and like I don't know if you want to bet Oklahoma minus 7.5. Like I don't know. You might not want to. You might be like I don't know. Like yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like they could cover that and lose like in a
yeah.
horrific way, right? So
Yeah, they're just radioactive. I couldn't. I I'd probably bet on New Mexico State against Minnesota before I try to bet on any Nebraska game. It just you're just it's just rolling the dice at that point. You don't know, are they really going to make it 60 minutes, without a screw up? It's kind of like betting on somebody's sobriety. Can they make it through this week without having a drink? It's kind of like that. It's that, like, you just don't know what's going to set somebody off. Um, yeah, just I don't know. It's must watch TV and it's must not bet games for
yes,
me.
definitely must not bet territory there. That actually does remind me. So I'm not sure if you have it in your book, but on my book, we're finally getting college football player props. So we actually had a bunch. There was player props for this game. I didn't touch them, just because my model isn't set up yet. But when it is ready for next week, I'll have player props for literally everything. I'll have rushing yards, receiving yards, all that stuff. But there's already player props. Like for example, I've already taken a shot at Aiden O'Connell over 2.5 passing touchdowns against Penn State. A little iffy on that, but I'm getting plus 145, so I'll take it. That's not bad.
Yeah.
If you so a couple of them are filtering out. We're recording this on Tuesday, so we're still missing a lot. But from the looks of it, it's seeming like every like Division 1 Power 5 school will have props no matter who they're playing. So, like, for example, Notre Dame, Ohio State is included in that. But like, if it's like Memphis, Boise, I don't think you're gonna get player props. But like that's
Hmm.
it though, right? Like, but that again, so you're like, oh no, I can only bet on player props on Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC games. Oh no, right? So like, there's a lot of them. Like, for example, you could get C.J. Stroud over 3.5 passing touchdowns against Notre Dame at plus 145. That's not bad hedging for like a blowout. That's not bad at all.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like, I'm there. Some of these are really cool, and like, I'm not messing with passing yards yet. I'll go with passing touchdowns and such. But yeah, I'm gonna start looking at a couple of these props, and we're gonna talk more about those starting next week. Do you have access to these or not?
yeah. I don't have player props on my book.
Oh.
Yeah, my guy doesn't mess around. He's kind of meat and potatoes.
That's fair. The thing of it is interesting though. It's an evolving market, right? Like, and again, player props are really popular. Apparently, they're really popular for the NFL, and now they're expanding. We're starting to see them more for college, and even for some of my esports. Like, there was never before this year, there was never player props for Call of Duty, and now there have been. And I've made quite a lot of money betting on some of them. So yeah, like, this is a rapidly growing field of games, because a lot of times people don't want to bet like a plus 3.5. They'll be like, I want this guy to get over 50 yards or something, right? So it's a rapidly growing thing, and I think eventually maybe your guy will get them eventually. We'll see. Um,
Yeah.
or betting in California will take off. All right, so let's take a look at a couple other games. Oh, actually, so we have some other games here. So we actually just mentioned this one, Notre Dame at Ohio State. So right now, this line, when we talked about it before on the podcast, the line was 14 and a half. It's now 17. I think it's 17 and a half some books too, depending. The lines are it's weird. Lines are all over the place. Like, I'm seeing like someone's quoting a line and like that's a dead line. That line is old. So like, a lot of lines are all over the place. Not like 10-point difference or something, but like sometimes they're a point or two off somewhere. But this line is 17, and it's kind of similar to the Georgia. It's actually the exact same line as Georgia, Oregon. Both are 17, but interestingly enough, though, Georgia's plus 600 on the money line, Oregon's plus 600, Notre Dame's plus 550. So it's fascinating to me that functionally what the lines are saying is that Notre Dame has an equal chance to beat Georgia. Notre Dame has an equal chance to beat Ohio State than Oregon does to beat Georgia. And that seems wrong to me. Doesn't that seem weird to you? Like, you're looking at one of what's supposed to be Georgia's supposed to be one of the best teams in the country, has an equal chance of losing to Oregon, a team that lost their head coach, did lose their quarterback. They have an equal chance, and again, Georgia's supposed to be one of the best teams. They're supposed to be a college football playoff team, but Oregon is not. They're not even favored to win their conference. But Ohio State is favored to beat them by as much uh, as Ohio State is favored to beat Notre Dame, a team that is in the top five. Doesn't that seem a little weird to you?
It does. What's interesting too is these are the Dogs are both led by two first-time head coaches as well. What especially doesn't make sense is, Oregon will their defense will be better this season, but I don't think they'll be one of the top three defenses that Georgia plays this season, just by nature of being the SEC. Whereas Notre Dame is by far the most difficult defense that Ohio State will play this season. I just don't. I think that Notre Dame's defense will be elite. I think I had them like top 10 last season, and I know that they are going to be among the most improved based off the current year improvement metric for their defense. And plus, you've got Marcus Freeman, running the show, so I think that's going to be even more of a focus. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I guess it's odd in that I'm very comfortable in, I guess I'm comfortable in Notre Dame's ability to slow down Ohio State, but not necessarily stop. Whereas Oregon, even though they're facing a lesser offense in Georgia, I just think, you know, with so many new pieces, in that road game, that I could easily see Oregon getting, just letting it get out, getting way behind early. And I think Notre Dame's going to at least make a game of it for a while. Now you just, offensively, can they keep pace with Ohio State? No, but that's just going to be more of a game. I don't get to your point. These two lines being so similar.
I think there's a like Ohio, Notre Dame has done a lot better in recent years of avoiding the big blowout against, like, because they've played Clemson 3 times in the last 2 years. There was a time years ago where anytime Notre Dame played anybody elite, it was like 20-point loss. They have come a long way in terms of mitigating blowouts against the best teams. Now, and even then, like they in that 2020 NFL season, they against that really good Alabama team. I think they covered the 18 and a half, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they? Or they came very close to it.
Yeah, I think they lost by 17 that game.
Yeah, they did cover. They did cover the spread, and that spread was a massive spread against. And again, that was an Alabama team that was stacked. You have Mac Jones, a current NFL quarterback. You had
Hmm.
Devontae Smith, an NFL wide receiver. Najee Harris, an NFL running back. Like you had that team was amazing, and a bunch of offensive linemen. Like that Alabama team was stacked, and they kept it to a 17-point loss. I like or 17. I don't hate Notre Dame plus 17. I don't even hate something on the money line here. Like especially on my book because in my book if your team leads by 17 points, you get a cash out on the money line. So like it doesn't matter if your team goes on to lose, you get it anyway. So I don't hate that at all. The other interesting thing I will say about Oregon Georgia, I know you don't believe in the Ducks and that's fine, but I look back at it last year. Guess which quarterback Georgia beat by the least last year, outside of Alabama, the game they lost.
Oh boy. Okay, Bo Nix.
It was
There's your
It was
knock
Bo
knock
Nix.
joke. You
So
got it.
I know, but here's the thing: is that great? No, it's not great. The thing of it is, I think the only way to beat this Georgia defense, is to pass against them, which is why they manhandle a lot of teams. They destroyed a lot of teams last year because if you're a
Yeah.
primarily rushing team like Florida was, you just got destroyed. I think that you have to pass against this defense, and I think the one of the people who's going to realize that is Dan Fleming, their former defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So, do I love Oregon in this game? No. Do I think they could cover 17? Maybe, right? Like this Georgia defense is good. They lost a couple pieces, but they're still
Yeah.
good. I have questions on offensively. They lost George Pickens. He's looking amazing there in Pittsburgh. They lost James Cook. He's now a Buffalo Bill. Um, I'm not the biggest like this Georgia offense could take a step back, which was already this was already not a great Georgia offense, right? This Oregon defense is half decent. I don't know. Maybe they could keep it close. We'll have to see. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess the other thing too that you kind of came right up to it but didn't really touch on it is I don't even know who Georgia's new defensive coordinator is, but I think that there's probably a lot of Kirby Smart in the defense anyways. Just the Georgia defense against Kenny Dillingham in, his first game as offensive coordinator, depending on who you believe or don't believe, this will be the first time he's calling plays. And he's got Bo Nix as his quarterback. I It's hard for me to back that, that the Ducks in that side of that matchup. Um, Especially when you're talking about, just the ferocious talent that Georgia has too. Um, Oregon really showed a lot at Ohio State last season, but I think that was more a matter of horrible defensive coaching. I don't know if Oregon really has SEC level talent. They've recruited well, but you know, maybe if they were playing more a team in the Ole Miss kind of level of the SEC than Georgia. I'm not going to bet this one, but if you gave me a free bet, I'd bet on Georgia.
Well, and that's actually an interesting point you raised about Ohio State, which is kind of why I really don't hate Notre Dame against Ohio State because we have seen that Ohio State team, their offense just get completely shut down by half decent defense and just splutter out. Like we saw them struggle against we saw them struggle against Oregon last year. We saw them struggle against that Michigan defense, right? Like there are some games and there's a couple other games where CJ Stroud just did not have it. Now, will he have it against Notre Dame this year? I don't know. I honestly don't know, but you're giving me plus 500 that one of the best defensive teams they're going to play that they're just going to crush through them. That's pretty good odds, honestly. But we'll have to see. Is it the best bet? No. There's probably other better bets to make on the board, but not something I hate. Like here's if we're sitting here next Tuesday, and we're talking about how Notre Dame pulled off the upset. I'm not the most shocked. I could see it. I'd be much more shocked about Oregon beating Georgia, to be honest.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we'll see.
What
I'm sorry, excited to see both games.
what other games are you seeing on the board right now?
Um, Utah, I made a case for them, and I made a case against Florida in the preseason pod. So I actually got Utah giving 2.5. I think it's up to
It's
three
3
now.
now, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you said you might jump on it when it hits three.
Yeah.
So we might be arm wrestling in week one over
Well,
on this one.
you can win. I can get a push. So there you go. So
Yeah,
that's okay. Uh,
exactly.
Also, I might like it's hit 3 on Tuesday. I don't think that's coming. There's a lot. Like most of the money is on Utah. I might wait for 3.5. We'll have to see.
Yeah,
Um,
it might get there. It wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think it's getting back down to 2. I don't think it's getting back down to 2.5. So
No,
I think it's
yeah,
going to stay there. But the thing of it is, I've already bet. I already placed. I got a draft duel, FanDuel account, and I already have. I got my bet on Florida +2 against Florida State. So I'm very happy about that. So that's good for like the last week of the season. So I'm good on that future. Um, we also have got Penn State -3.5 at Purdue. This was down to 3 for a bit, 3 with juice on the +3 for Purdue. Now it's back down to 3.5. Um, I don't know. I still really like Purdue. I
hmm
don't I don't trust this Penn State team. I like Aiden O'Connell. I have him over. I've bet this in money line and O'Connell over passing touchdowns. What do you think on that? You're with me on that one, right?
yeah. When we did the Big Ten West, I was barely able to come to Minnesota over Purdue to win the West. I like Purdue, and it's just because Purdue was luckier last season, and they might regress a little bit. Um, I mean, O'Connell's a better quarterback. If you're talking Will Levis on the road, especially, um, I don't know. I'd be curious what his best road win is. Purdue's not the toughest place to play, but it's maybe sneaky tough venue. Especially week one. That's interesting on the Thursday. I'm curious what that environment will be like. Um, that's just weird because you got a big name team, Penn State, coming in on Thursday night. I don't know if classes have started. Really interesting. Purdue's like, it seems like they're always like the early game on Big Ten
Yeah.
network.
The thing is, Purdue has a habit of knocking off really good teams. So like and randomly when no one's expecting them to. And I think there's a lot of money coming in on Penn State. So I have this now. If this keeps creaking up, then I'll maybe take another swing at it. Maybe we'll see. Um,
I
Cincinnati.
think I think I'm gonna play that money line actually.
Yeah.
I think that's the play on that one. Sorry, go ahead.
That's all good. I This is another one I actually really like. I really like Cincinnati at +6 at Arkansas. I'm really loving Arkansas in this spot. This was 7, and I was iffy on it, but I'm a lot more solid on it. In Arkansas -6. The thing of it was Cincinnati got blown out by Alabama, and part of that was just that they just could not compete. Like, sure, yes, they had Desmond Ritter, who by the way looks amazing with in a Falcon. He looks amazing with the Falcons. He actually should probably be starting week 1, but again, in the NFL, there's incentives to tank, so you may as well just tank a couple games with Marcus Mariota first. But Desmond Ritter actually could be the future in Atlanta or somewhere. Um, but at the same point in time, like they had Desmond Ritter, they had Sauce Gardner, they had I can't remember what's the wide receiver, Alex Pierce, I think. They had a couple of pieces, and that was good. Their top people were competitive with Alabama, but you get 5 through 40, they were not competitive with Alabama. And now you're going up against an Arkansas team, and Arkansas is an SEC team. These are SEC players. And not only that, but this was an Arkansas team that was young last year. They are a
hmm
lot better. They're going to be a lot better this year. And this is a rebuilding year for Cincinnati. And you're throwing them right at an SEC caliber team. That's concerning to me. This is where I kind of like. I think this is a blowout. I think this is like Arkansas wins this game by like 20 points. I'm not going to bet that. I'm probably going to bet Arkansas -6. But like this to me screams blowout here.
Um, y- yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. Um, the thing that's interesting to me is Cincinnati's really starting over on defense. I think by season's end they'll be good. I think Arkansas's offense is kind of overlooked, continually. And I bring that up because the total on this is 52. And one thing, in my data nerd quest, what's interesting is every season for the last 8 seasons, the average final score of a game is 56. And I'm thinking you've got Cincinnati's defense is starting over. Arkansas's offense is probably overlooked. Cincinnati's offense actually, as you mentioned, they lose a couple of key guys. But if they start the guy that transferred, I think transferred from Eastern Michigan, he has a lot of experience, and they return. They have incredible returning experience on the offensive line too. So I'm probably going to play as just a small one on the over here. 52 is low to me.
That's fair. I think that's a fair take on that. Louisville -5 at Syracuse. This -5 seems really low to me. I don't know if we're expecting. It seemed really low to me, but then running my model last year. So if there was in my for my model, if there was a bowl game between Louisville and Syracuse, I actually have that about right. I actually have I have my spread at -4.5, which is actually what it is in some books. So I actually have that about right. But again, that's not factoring in Louisville's probably gonna be better this year. Another year from Malik Cunningham. Syracuse, I don't know much about what they're doing this year. They're generally kind of not a great ACC team. Do you think that, like, are we on Louisville here or?
If yeah, I think it's a play. I'm just not sure since I've got I've got my preseason bet on Louisville for AC. I know I've got them for season total wins. I don't think I got them for ACC wins. I think there's enough there, enough action to maybe just kind of just watch this one with interest. But 4.5 seems so short. Now, Syracuse does run the ball and they had a decent defense last season, but I can't see them keeping pace. I don't think they're going to stop Louisville. Louisville lost a pretty key receiver, but they got a really good transfer. I can't remember, where he's from, but he's pretty decently thought of. We talked about Cunningham. Just he had a great first season under Satterfield. So I'll probably bet just a small one on Louisville, not because I don't believe in it, but just because I've got enough action just on my season total bets. I think it's not quite a line that stinks. I think there's probably just some skepticism on Louisville.
Yeah, it's not the full trap line. Like some of them, like the Virginia Tech -7.5, that screams trap against Old Dominion. But like this is something where it's like I could kind of see this line being correct. But I just kind of think the books are kind of underlooking this Louisville team right now. Um, Boise State +3 at Oregon State. I kind of like the Beavs here. Give me the Beavs. I like my model actually really does. My model likes Oregon State a lot in this game actually. So I'll take that. I kind of believe in the model there. Are you? 'Cause this Boise State team was not particularly great last year. I don't think they're getting better from the transfer portal. Are you like they lost Khalil Shakir, who's now a wide receiver for the Bills. He's actually really good. He's been amazing for the Bills, and he really
Hmm.
carried that team a lot last year. Um, I think that might be a really kind of underlooked loss for this Boise State team.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that this might be classic of that BBMI, just brand based market inertia, where there's just people aren't kind of yet realizing that this is not Boise State from 3, 4, 5 years ago. I mean, they went 7-5, and like I hit on in the preseason pod, it's not like they hired a proven head coach. This is a first time head coach, and I'm kind of willing to bet against, that it just takes a little longer for his system to take root here. So I like Oregon State. These programs are in two totally different spots. Aside from basically having almost the same record last season, you know, one's in the Pac-12 and one's in the Mountain West. There's a big difference in talent there. It just this line I don't think should be 3. I think it's hard for a lot of people to come to terms with maybe giving 6 or so with Oregon State, but I'd kind of bump it up at least a field goal. I think just we're kind of off a whole octave here in terms of the what the line is.
Yeah, Oregon State is a rushing team, and I don't know if Boise State's gonna have the physicality to be able to contend with that. Like they can just keep running and running and running and running and just break that defense, and I think that's exactly what we could be looking at. Um, Couple other ones I kind of want to point out here.
Let
Um,
me ask you real quick about
okay,
that. So I think that one's at like a 3.5, right? Oregon State.
it depends where you're looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that line's going to go up or down?
Huh.
In other words, should I be betting this now or should I wait?
Yeah, no, that's fair. Um, I kind of think you want it. Yeah, I've got Oregon State -6. I think we're slowly seeing money come in on Oregon State. I could see this getting to like a full three. I think I got this at 2.5 in one book, but I think like this is kind of three-ish now. I think we could see this getting up to like maybe 3.5. But I could also see late money coming in on Boise too, right? Like I don't know, right? I could kind of see that going either way. So I don't know the more likely scenario, but I'd probably rather like if you're seeing three, I'd rather grab the three now than wait on a potential something else in the future.
Okay.
Some other interesting lines here, though. So this is a line we've talked a lot about already. North Carolina versus App State. We talked about this early in the preseason when this was like three, then it went down to 2.5. App State was actually flashed the favorite there for a day or two there. Now it's flipped back. So the thing was when all of a sudden Appalachian State was the favorite, I was like, I wonder if North Carolina's kind of undervalued. But now it's flipped back, and now I'm like, okay, I think Appalachian State's the. I keep going back and forth on this, right? Because like North Carolina didn't look great against what did they who they play?
Florida A&M, who
Florida
like
A and
had
M.
they lost like 25 players like 2 days before the game.
Yeah, and they almost didn't cover. Actually, yeah, they almost didn't cover the spread. Um, so not the greatest sign, but yeah, actually, now that I'm seeing App State at even money, I think I might take that even money. Are you still with me on that? I think that's a fair play. I think.
Yeah, boy, I'm just mm, it's a tough call. I just, I kind of want to say, I guess, just thinking out loud here. I think North Carolina loses one of those two games, either at App State or at Georgia State. App State's a better team. Um, I guess, yeah, yeah. Well, it's only one. I was thinking maybe App State money line, but that's not going to be really much of a push at all. Um, I'll put
It's
it this way:
even
it'd be
plus
hard. It'd
100.
be
Not
hard. It'd
that
be
bad.
hard to bet on North Carolina. It's either App State or just stay away.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And kind of the last line that I saw that I thought was interesting is Tulsa minus 6.5 against Wyoming. I kind of don't mind fading this Wyoming team again. I don't know if they're a competitive team. What do you think on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I agree. I think they might be in a much worse spot than we thought before before last week. Um, I don't know a ton about Tulsa, but yeah, I just don't like where Wyoming was, figured to be a little bit of a rebuild if I remember correctly. They were one of those teams that had really low improvement metrics on both sides of the ball, and that might have undersold just kind of the rebuild that we're looking at.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Um, yeah, there's not many other ones. Temple at Duke. Temple getting 7. It's not horrible. It's Duke, right? But I feel like now we're following the same trap as last week when we're like, oh well, Wyoming getting 11. It can't be that bad, right? But
Yeah, I think I'm going to call these just price discovery games where, the market could be all over the place and this is just an average of a wide variety of opinions. I just don't know how you put a price on either of these teams. I mean, like I said, I think Temple is the first team I talked about in the very first preview pod just because I think they could be in a really, really bad situation, but it's not like Mike Elko walked into a great situation at Duke. I mean, there was, I think for like 3 years, the whole thing was when are they going to get rid of Cutcliffe? Um, I just, yeah, this could be anything. Nothing would surprise me in this game. So maybe it's Temple money line. I'm not serious, but
yeah, no, yeah, I honestly don't know. You could convince me Temple plus 7, Temple money line like plus 220 on the money line. This is a Friday game. Also, Western Michigan plus 22.5 against Michigan State is
hmm,
like. Do we want to start fading this Michigan State team early against a MAC team? It is a Michigan game. I don't know.
yeah. The one thing was Western Michigan starting over at quarterback.
Hmm.
But they've been pretty good the last few years under I always get his name wrong. It's not Brewster. I get his name wrong. It's Lester, Tim Lester. I don't think they've ever had a losing season. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to beat Michigan State, but they've probably got a puncher's chance. They've never just been like, oh my god, this team is horrible or not competitive.
No, they
Uh,
usually are pretty competitive.
yeah,
Yeah. I also don't hate the Central Michigan Chippewas against Oklahoma State on Thursday night. It's 21.5 points. That's a lot of points, especially for Oklahoma and Spencer Sanders to score. That is like, that's a little iffy from. Yes, it's a MAC team, fine, but like really, it's like a MAC team. Like, are we? That's a lot of. And then remember, Oklahoma State does lose their defensive coordinator, right? They lose them. They lost him to I. What was
Ohio
it?
State.
Ohio State, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also a player prop I like in that game. You can get. Let's see if you like this. Spencer Sanders over zero point 0.5 interceptions plus 145.
Yeah. As soon as you said that, I knew it was going to be Spencer Sanders and interceptions.
Yeah, I like that. I actually really like that. I
Yeah.
like that's not a bad prop at all. You get Central Michigan's quarterback over 1.5 passing touchdowns for plus one, like plus 195. But that seems like you have over 2 passing touchdowns against a decent, or at least probably a good Oklahoma State defense. That's iffy. But you're
Yeah,
telling me
that
you're
is
giving me
tough.
plus 145 for a scrappy defense to get a pick on Spencer Sanders? That's not bad at all. I'll take that. All right. Any other lines that you see, or you want to talk about West Virginia Pitt again, or I think that's pretty much it actually outside of West Virginia Pitt.
Um, yeah, no, just interesting. Two USC quarterbacks going against each other. Pat Narduzzi, who knows what he's got up his sleeve? He might feel a little threatened, and Scott Frost doing a crazy in-game decision. He might just want to just one up him and just do something really stupid. Especially if there's any pressure in that. That's a big high stakes game. West Virginia and Pitt, so he might really crack. I'm talking myself to just maybe not missing it down to this one, just because of the Narduzzi factor.
Yeah, this is a Thursday nighter. It's gonna be prime-ish time, 7 o'clock Eastern. But yeah, this is a game I'm watching for sure. Um, I'm on West Virginia here, and yeah, I like that. So yeah, so that about does it for this week. I think we hit a lot of games. We talked about a lot of stuff, and yeah, we'll come here next week, and then we'll at that we might be adding James Franklin to the hot seat list if they lose to Purdue.
Yeah.
I will. We're gonna do that, by the way. If they lose to Purdue, we're adding him to the hot seat list. But yeah, so we'll see you guys next week.